There are only 168 hours in a week. Take out sleep, and most of us spend a third, sometimes even half of our waking hours working. So, no wonder why our health, friendships, and hobbies often fall to the wayside. What if, instead of working 5 days a week, you flipped the script and worked just 3? What would change? What would you prioritize? And how would your life improve? For many on the path to financial independence, this is not a fantasy. It's an option that's closer than we think. We just need the blueprint for how to make it happen. That's exactly what today's guest, Andy Hill, is here to share. Andy's gone from working a full-time job and running a full-time side hustle to building a solopreneur life where he works just 20 to 25 hours per week. And it's not just him. His wife has done the same thing. In this conversation, Andy shares how to design your own 3-day work week, how to earn enough to sustain a lifestyle without stressing out about your future, and how to build the financial foundation that lets you transition to part-time work so you can start full-time living. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with the creator of Marriage, Kids, and Money and the author of the new book, Own Your Time, Andy Hill. I really want to kind of paint a picture of what someone's life could potentially look like. So if you could share a couple of your favorite things that you can do now that you couldn't do when you were working full-time.
This is the reason that we do all this financial stuff, honestly. For me, I'll speak personally. I've been able to take care of my health a lot more than I was previously in my corporate job. I did like exercising, but it was more of like an idea of exercising as opposed to actually doing it each week. I'm coming off of the past couple weeks of going to the gym and running 5 days in a row, and it's just making me feel so healthy and alive. This is not something I was able to do with my demanding corporate career. I have leaned more into becoming a better husband to my wife. That is somebody that supports her in the household duties, that's cooking dinner throughout the week. This is not something I used to do in my corporate life. I have leaned into becoming a better father, being there for my kids when they finish school to talk to them about their day, the good, the bad, the indifferent, helping my son with his homework. He wants to be a cross-country star. I go running with him. These are the things that I want to lean into in this new solopreneur life that I have, working 20 to 25 hours a week, that I could not do in my corporate life. So I am so proud of those 3 areas and so many more. Spending time with my aging parents, volunteering in my community, reconnecting with friends that I haven't spoken to in so long. These are the things that life is really made of. And unfortunately, when majority of our time is taken up between your corporate job and getting a decent amount of sleep, there's not a lot of life left for those other things.
Definitely. Yeah, I was surprised to hear that you had some health issues kind of earlier on in your life, because I've only known you for maybe 4 or 5 years at this point in time. And you're a fit dude, man. Like you can hang with me on a run for sure. You're lean. You look strong at all point in time. So I'm glad you started reprioritizing health and, made that a primary focus along with all the other things that you said. And you started your book, Own Your Time out, with this parable around like rocks, pebbles, and sand. How does that demonstrate priorities?
Yeah, so you may have heard that parable in the past. I really love it. It essentially talks about this teacher that is up in front of the class and describes a situation. So she says she's got an empty jar, and she starts to fill it with rocks. And the jar looks pretty full when you see the jar full of rocks, and asks the class, hey, is the jar full? And they say, yeah, the jar's full. And then she proceeds to take another container filled with pebbles and starts to trickle those pebbles amongst the rocks in there. And they all find little ways to make their ways around those bigger rocks. And again, she shows this jar with rocks and pebbles in it to the class and says, is it full now? And they say, oh, yes, it's full. She takes another container, she starts to fill up that original jar with sand. And they find their way in those cracks between the rocks and the pebbles. And then it looks very, very full. At this point, she says, all right, is the jar full? And they kind of laugh and say yes. And her point here is that this jar represents life. And we only have so many opportunities to fill this jar of life with our goals, our values, our priorities. And if we are filling it rocks, pebbles, then sand, the rocks represent your biggest priorities in life. These are things like your health, your family, your faith, things like these big, important things that you really stand for. The pebbles might represent your hobbies, your job, your things like this. And then the sand represents the material possessions of life. And sometimes when we get things wrong, we fill the sand in first with the material possessions, all the things that we think the trappings of life, the things that we think we need. And then there's not a lot of room for those pebbles even, or definitely not a lot of room for the rocks. And those rocks start to spill over of the side of the jar, and you're not able to actually prioritize the things that matter. And so I love that parable because it allows us to metaphorically empty the jar of life and say, how do we want to fill it up? How do we want to create this life of ours? I love the parable, but I have a big, big issue with it. And I'll tell you what the issue is, Justin, is that, of course, if we had all of the time and the priorities of the world, we'd be able to say, of course, I'm going to put all the most important things. I'm going to be healthier. I'm going to take care of my family. I'm going to do all the right things and put those rocks in first, then the pebbles, then the sand. A big problem with this is that we don't have the financial strength to do that, to say, I'm sorry, Mr. Boss, like that's too many hours to work in a week. I know you want me to work 60 hours and go above and beyond, go to this event and the weekends and network, but that's not going to work for me. You know how long I would be at that company? But when you get the financial strength and the financial confidence to be able to craft your day and say, hey, this is what works for me. And if it doesn't work for you, I will find out a different working situation, or in the long term, maybe own my own business that allows me to prioritize these types of things. So I love that parable, but I do have a beef with it because we do need to have our financial ducks in a row to make it possible.
I love it too. And I don't think we're demonizing work. Like, I feel like work is actually an important piece.
Oh, yeah.
It could even be a rock for someone. The problem is that it tends to be a very outsized portion of that jar. And there are lots of things in life that are worth prioritizing and spending time on, work being one of them, but it shouldn't be 30, 40, 50% of your waking hours, like I said in the introduction here. Like it deserves a place, but not the amount that most people end up doing, which is why I really love this concept around the 3-day work week that we're going to be talking about here. And a lot of the people that are listening and in this community, they've built a lot of the financial foundation. Now they just need a little bit of the blueprint and honestly a little bit of the push to start making some of these changes.
Yeah, I would agree. And to your point, Justin, on that rock maybe being larger for work than others, sometimes that the hours that we talk about that we're actually working, we're not actually factoring in all of the parts that go before it and the parts that go after. That is the preparing to go to work. That is shopping for the wardrobe to go to work. That is the commute to work. That is the after work mental drag of thinking about work, maybe checking email at night. So it's like these undisclosed hours that are outside of our work week that really start to completely take over the jar.
For sure.
So I just wanted to put that out there because I know a lot of people feel that. They got to commute for 30 minutes back and forth to the office. Or even at the end of a Friday, they're still thinking about all that stuff that happened during the week. Maybe that drags into Saturday a little bit. Then Sunday comes around, and then you start to get the Sunday scaries to being like, oh my God, I got to deal with that thing on Monday morning. When does the brain have any time to really relax?
For sure. What financial milestones made you and your wife feel comfortable reducing your work hours?
So a big milestone for us on the journey was this milestone of Coast Fire. And I love that it honors the tenets of financial independence and retire early with the ability for people to realize that part-time work can also be as gratifying, probably more gratifying than being completely retired and then not having a purpose or work. Work, as you said, work can be great. I've got a job right now that I love. I'm excited about on Monday. I think you do too.
Yes.
So that is something we did. So we built our investment balance to around $500,000 by age 40. And we started to look at those compound interest calculators to say, man, if we slowed down or even completely stopped our contributions, this thing could still go to 2 million plus by the time we need it in our 60s. Isn't that kind of nuts? And so we started to say, well, if we stopped those contributions, what could we do with that extra money? And for us around the time, we had already paid off our debt. We had even paid off our mortgage at this point. But we said, well, why don't we just pile that money up into an FU money bucket on, savings account, liquid savings account, and this will become both of our bridges to say goodbye to work that we don't enjoy and lead us to a life of part-time work and more opportunity to take care of our health, more opportunity for our marriage, more opportunity for being good parents. And that's what we did. And then using the money that you have available after paying off your mortgage and after stopping contributions to pile up money in an FU money savings bucket, stockpile that money, maybe 12 months of expenses. That's what we did, 12 months of expenses. And then you can confidently move towards work that feels good in your life, purposeful work. And that's what my wife and I did. And we can talk a little bit more about what that work is.
Yeah, let's do it here. But first, one more follow-up question. Was that FU money bucket, that 12 months of savings, enough to give you the confidence, or were there other fears that kind of held you back from cutting hours, moving towards part-time work that you had to overcome?
Yeah, the FU money bucket definitely helped me a lot. The second piece of that, I'll do it in 3 pieces.
Okay.
FU money bucket was fantastic for my confidence. The second piece was me testing out my side hustle for years before saying goodbye. So much so that I got some contracts through my side hustle where I said, all right, not only do I like this work, but people are willing to pay me good money to do it. So that made me feel confident. And then the third one was really the best words that I ever heard. And it came out of my wife's mouth, just saying, you've got this, you can do this, I trust you, I love you. So those 3 things made it possible.
That's awesome. Good kudos on your wife too. Sometimes
Absolutely,
it needs someone else on your side to kind of push you across the line.
I couldn't have done any of this without her. She is my rock. I love her. I mean, pun intended with the rocks in the jars. Absolutely my rock.
Yes. What about, talk to me about the thought process, but like maybe it's in your own head, maybe it's with your wife, of weighing the options of whether to double down on savings and kind of continuing to charge towards the FI finish line, or to really take a step back once you hit coast FI and truly embrace the coast of that element.
Yeah, I would say this has been trial and error in my situation. Early on, I, was gung-ho for the traditional corporate life. Hey, I'm a worker guy. I'm going to work really hard. I'll work extra hours. And then I saw how that really robbed my time as a husband, as a father. And I said, well, this isn't working. And so then I tried out like the Ramsey plan. I'm like, okay, let's pay off all our debt. Let's go nuts on that. And then I saw, wow, this really lacks the ability for me to become an owner and really move away from being an employee. So I felt like something was missing there. Then I kind of went full charge into the FIRE movement, and I said, I see the separation here. If I invest like crazy, then I can retire in my 30s or 40s. And the problem with that, at least in my situation, is that alienated my wife and our situation. And I went on this solo path that felt very alone, that felt very, okay, I am pushing hard towards a goal that I'm interested in, but not one that she's interested in. So much so that it became too intense, where my goals were so separated from her goals that we started having fights, we started having arguments. This led to us going to marriage counseling and marriage therapy. At this point, it was a pretty tough moment for me. I had a crazy corporate job that I didn't like. I had a side hustle that I was working that was inspiring. I had young kids at home, and I loved them to pieces. But yeah, they were a lot of work at 4 and 2. So I just felt really just dead inside, honestly. And I'm like, this can't be right. So we started our counseling sessions. And at that point, I really felt like a failure, man. I felt like I let my wife down. I'm not honoring the things that I'm even interested in. I feel like I'm just moving in a direction to do something, and it's not working. And we started those counseling sessions, and man, was that the best thing for our relationship. What we didn't have at that time was time. We had not been setting aside time to connect. No morning coffees, no connection time on the weekends. Just go, 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 go. And what marriage counseling did for us was set aside an hour of time where all we could do was really dive into the issues at hand. And man, was that the best thing for our relationship. We spent about 9 months in and out of sessions. What I learned from that was that I was not empathizing with my wife's situation at all. I was thinking about my goals. I was thinking from a scared fear position of like, oh my God, I am in a tough situation. How do I get out of it? And that was not fair to my wife and her goals and the things that she was going through. And my wife learned, man, he really hates his job. He really feels stuck. What can I do to help him move forward in a better way? So what we found through our trial and error of all these different scenarios was that we needed to find a middle ground between working the corporate life for 40 years and then this hard charging path towards fire. And so we found Coast Fire in the middle of this, and adding in the fact that you can find work that you enjoy on a part-time basis. This was the blessing that we had been looking for in our relationship, and it transformed everything for us. I calmed down with my crazy savings rate, and she embraced the fact that she can be a part of this fix together, and then gave me that confidence to say, hey man, go for it. I know that you can. And leading into early 2020, that's when I was able to say goodbye to my corporate career with her blessing and a great partnership.
That's awesome, man. What a cool story.
Thank you.
And I'm glad you found Coast Fi. I feel like you framed it perfectly. It's such a good middle ground in a lot of this. And I often forget that it's a trigger you can turn on and off whenever you want to. There might be a period where you find a job, a high paying job that's really exciting for you. And maybe you turn the faucet back on and you're investing pretty heavily. And then there are moments when you might just need a coast and pay for your living expenses and not worry about future self from an investment and savings perspective. You did so much work over the last decade, getting your nest egg up to a place where you know it's got to grow and take care of you eventually. You can stop worrying about some of that stuff. Let's jump into the 3-day work week. I got a couple of questions around kind of what your 3-day work week looks like, hopefully to kind of help the listener imagine what they could potentially do. And then I want to get into a couple of like the practicals or the tacticals of how someone can actually do it as well. So why don't we just start with like what your current 3-day schedule looks like? Is there specific days that you work or hours that you work?
Yeah. So for me, I am really militant about this 20 to 25 hour work week. I actually have a habit tracker on my phone that holds me accountable to say, how many hours did you work today? How many hours did you work today? And then by the time Thursday comes around, I'm like, okay, I'm really harsh on myself too. It's like, hey, if you get to this 25-hour spot, you're good, man. Like, let it go. Monday will be here soon, or Tuesday for that matter, will be here soon. Then you can jump back into it. None of these things are emergencies. You've designed your business in a way where there are no emergencies. And I think that's a part of the process too, is trying to figure out ways to create a business that helps you thrive and feel good in your life that doesn't contain emergencies. You know, I'm in the content creation business. There's a way to do that where you've got to be on every day, talk about the news, talk about the financial news, talk about oh my God, the stock market's falling, blah, 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 blah. That never ends. That's like creating a perpetual 7-day-a-week job, in my opinion. I know some people do it well, and I've always wanted to create financial education content and support other people in a way that feels evergreen, that feels like, hey, this can last on. These are sage wisdom advice, like things that I've learned from other people. Obviously, I'm regurgitating a lot of it from other smarter people before me, but trying to grab onto those things that don't require me to say, oh man, I better check my Instagram on Saturday night while my kids are looking for my attention. Like, no, I've deleted all of the social media apps from my phone. Anything that comes as a distraction, I am really trying to honor that time frame. So to answer your question, what does my week look like right now? Usually on Monday, I start off by getting my kids off to school. My wife and I have been going for runs on Mondays, which is fantastic. A great way for us to connect, have a little coffee beforehand, check in with each other on the important things that are going on in life. Then we go for a run. I've been going to the gym a lot lately, which has been fantastic, just to, as a man in his 40s knows, that it's important to do strength training as well as running because you got to take care of your body. So by the time noon comes around and I'm having lunch with my wife, I've already set my week off on a great foot. So half of my Monday is done, and I've already connected with my wife, exercised, cardio as well as strength training, and then filled up with some great food and conversation with my wife. Then 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, I'm ready to do some work for a few hours. But then my kids come home around like 4 or 5. I want to be there for them for the sporting events. My daughter's really into volleyball. My son's really into cross country. And then they need some help with homework. I like to make them a little food after school. And we have dinner, and that's our day. So then Tuesday rolls around. That's more of, okay, I would say maybe a 4 or 5 hour work day. Some of the same stuff, exercising in the morning and then working. Kids come home around 3 or 4. Again for Wednesday, again for Thursday. Friday, I'm pretty militant about I don't do anything. Will I slip up every once in a while and need a little bit of work on Friday? Yeah, sure, but it's an hour or two. But mostly on Fridays, what I'm trying to do at that point is connect with my father, who's 77, go for a walk with him, connect with friends I haven't seen in a while, grab lunches, encourage my friends to go for a run with me, maybe play pickleball. I caught a movie with my buddy the other day who also owns his own business. We went to go see, Good Fortune. It's hilarious comedy on Friday at noon. Literally, we're the only 2 people in the theater. But it was great.
It's awesome.
We had a great lunch. We had a great conversation, some important things that were going on in his life. I was there for him as a friend. These are the bonding things that I just didn't have before. And then that frees up my weekend for non-work anything, man. Like as a homeowner, you got a lot of things that are going on in your house. My daughter's into soccer. Take care of her there. My wife and I have been going on more dates lately and going on more adventures. It just feels more relaxed and more breezy. I'll be honest with you, from the income side of things, compared to my corporate career, right now I make about half of what I used to make. Mm-hmm. So that's a trade-off, right? You really got to think about that. But if you've set up your financial situation a way where you don't really need that $180,000 anymore, you can live just fine on 90 or 70 or 80 or whatever it ends up being. If you really look at those numbers, it's not really that bad. What am I saving? What am I over saving for retirement? Do I really need $10 million in my retirement account or even 3 or 4? It's like, no, man, we spend around $7,000 a month very comfortably. And that is us, just everybody. Again, I live in southeastern Michigan. We have no mortgage. We have no need to save or invest for retirement anymore. And we've got 2 kids. So I know everybody's situation's different, but we live in a nice suburb. We've got a 2,700 square foot house. I like to give as much detail as possible so the comparison's sake can help. But that's where we are. And I think if you eliminate some of those bigger expenses in life, we own both of our cars outright. These types of things help to make our expenses lower, but then also still enjoy a lot of the important things in life.
Yeah, mathematically, a lot of people are probably already there, especially people that listen to this podcast. They're in their 30s, their 40s. Many of them are halfway, if not a little bit further along to their financial independence number. Depending on what their target date is, they're probably in Coast Fi. And especially many of them that have jobs that they like, they just want to do it a little bit less, or run businesses that they wouldn't mind scaling back a little bit. Like when you think about it, like using round numbers here, like let's say they're bringing in $100,000 a year and 20% of that's going out to taxes right away. And 50% of that is living expenses. Let's call it, 50 grand. And then they're stashing away the other 30% in saving and investing. If you take away the saving and investing, like you no longer prioritize that. And like if you're going to cut your income back, you're also got to cut your taxes back too. Let's call it half your taxes. I mean, you might only need half of what taxes were, which was 20 grand. So 10 grand. Don't need that 30 grand for savings and investing anymore. You might need 60 grand to live like it. And there might be a way, there might be an opportunity for you to even stay with your current employer in a more part-time role, gain 10, 15, 20 hours back in your week, and still be able to live the exact same life that you're living right now.
I would say that is probably the best option. I like owning my own business and crafting my own time, but the reality is it's harder. I am not a marketing department, a legal department, an accounting department. I'm all those things now, man. Mm-hmm. It's a lot. And I used to work in the corporate career and I'd be able to, rely on all these folks. But as a solopreneur, you got to do all those things. So I would say the easiest route and probably the smartest route in the beginning is having conversations with your current employer. Of course, if you can trust them or if you can trust your HR, You only know that situation best.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you could go from a 40, 50 hour a week situation to a 20 to 25 hour a week situation, still provide for your employer. Maybe they're saving a little bit of money by cutting you back on time. But what you gain out of that is so much more life. And I think that's what a lot of folks who are pursuing financial independence are looking for. They're looking for a little bit more time freedom. And having that conversation with your employer could help you, even if that is a gradual situation. Hey, can I go from 40 to 35 hours a week, 30 hours a week eventually, and then just see how that works, and just dipping your toes in the water could make a big difference.
You have any suggestions on how to approach that with your employer? I would assume many people, listening to this will immediately say, well, my employer would never go for that. Like, can you counter argue with that at all?
I think the first reaction is that they won't, and then we just stop, and then we just say, hey, it's easier for me just to hard charge towards fire. I think what I've seen and what I've learned from other people who I've interviewed is that employers can be more open to this than we think. Now, it might feel nerve-wracking to bring it up to them. And again, only you know how open your supervisor would be to this. If this is a really tough time in your corporate situation and they're looking to let people go, maybe it isn't the best time to bring those types of things up. But you could interview, have conversations with, have a coffee with other people in your building that maybe are already doing this. And it's not as apparent, but there are some folks that are maybe working in your building already that are working part-time, or people that you work with that are contractors or freelancers that do what you do, and maybe you could figure out how you could do that as well, and then craft your schedule around the time that you want to work. So I think there's a lot of options out there, and having conversations with people who are already doing it can be a really great place to start. If you don't have a great relationship with your supervisor, maybe having conversations with HR can be a good place to go too. But I think starting those conversations can be helpful. But again, only you know in your personal situation if it's a smart move or not. If it feels tense, if it feels like people are getting laid off because of the economy, then yeah, do the smart thing, and keep building up maybe your own business, your own side hustle that you're passionate about. Another alternative outside of your employer is that there might be another employer that is hiring part-time specifically. My wife is a great example of this. She went back to trade school to learn how to be an esthetician because she was very excited about helping women in their skin to make them feel more beautiful and happier. And she purposely sought out part-time work. So there are companies that are hiring specifically for part-time work, and a company that is looking for people that have your specific skill set might be looking to hire part-time. So seeking out other employers in that situation could be another alternative. So there is, step one is like, can I look within my own building to see if this is a possibility of going down to part-time? Step two would be like, all right, in my industry, with my skill set, with my highly paid, my degree and everything like that, could I jump to another company that is paying people to work part-time? The third could be like, could I work as a freelancer or a contractor with my skill set, doing what I'm doing as my own solopreneur type of business? And then the fourth level is like, all right, maybe I'm totally burnt out on the type of work that I am doing, and I don't want to do it ever again. What can I do to start a little side hustle on the side for something that is interesting to me, that follows in line with my ikigai, which is that great Japanese term that it's like the market needs it, I'm good at it, somebody will pay me for it. And, you kind of intersect those things and say, okay, what's my ikigai? How can I move to create a side hustle out of that, and then eventually build it up into a business where I could say, hey, this is my thing. It has nothing to do with my former engineering career, accounting career. It's something completely different, and I want to move forward with it. That's the level 4 that I went with, and I'll tell you, it was very hard, and it took me a long time to do it. I've been doing my side hustle since 2016, and it wasn't until 2020 that I said goodbye to my corporate career full time. So if timing is something you're interested in, maybe level 1 is the quickest way to get there.
Yeah, I love all those levels. I'm probably biased with you on level 4 as someone that kind of followed that exact same path. You walk through this in your book, Own Your Time too. And it's kind of like you go from one job to 1.5 jobs and you're kind of building that side hustle and then you bring that back down. Then it's like, okay, maybe you bring your full-time job down to part-time as you ramp up your side hustle a little bit more. And then you completely drop your full-time job, or well, I guess now your part-time job, your W-2 job, and then you're fully in from your side hustle, which I guess now becomes your main hustle at that point in time.
Exactly. And that's what my wife and I did. We were both 2 working income, we had a double income, so 2 incomes. And then at one point I'm like, okay, let me grab onto a side hustle. So then it was like 2.5 jobs out of our house. That was stressful. And that was probably around the time of the marriage counseling. As you can see, there's a math problem there that leads to marriage counseling when you're overworked and you have no time for the other parts of your life. So if you do the side hustle route, which I know that you've gone through too, Justin, it's like make a plan to not make that your permanent existence. I've interviewed some couples on my podcast where they were on this debt-free charge. They had $200,000 of debt or student loans and things like that. And they said, well, if we could just work 3 jobs for 5 years and we'll get rid of this stuff. It's like, oh man, or you could have a heart attack, you could get divorced. And that's okay. If you see it for a season of your life and you're like, okay, I'll work hard for a season of my life, but then I need to know that there is some, sunshine on the rainbow on the other side. That can be okay, but just don't make it your permanent existence.
Yeah, it's so funny. But once you find something you enjoy doing, and you're doing it at a rate or capacity that doesn't necessarily interfere with lots of other things in your life, it becomes very sustainable. And it was like, I was kind of thinking in my head early on in my FI journey, like, oh, I'm going to work till 35. And then I'll just FI at that point in time and do whatever I want. Now I'm recognizing through the side hustle I built, that's now a business, that's probably something I'm going to continue doing at least right now, indefinitely, but it definitely passed probably 35 for me. I'm not going to be putting up zeros in the income category. I almost wish I would have taken a few of these steps to pull back work sooner, knowing that I'm probably got to be that guy that retires with millions and millions of dollars because I found something I really enjoy and I get paid to do it. So,
I mean, that's the reality about retirement investing too, is that I got so proud of that, and then 59 and a half will come around, and I might look at myself and be like, well, I like what I do. I want to keep doing it on a part-time or quarter-time basis, and that just means there's another income source until my dying day, as long as I'm relevant, right? I mean, there might come a time where I'm in my 80s or something where I'm like, I physically don't want to do anything. I don't want to contribute. But I do think that there's something to having purpose. There's been so many studies done for retirees that they work and grind so hard. They get to that 60-year-old time frame or 50-year-old time frame, depending on if they have a pension, and then they just lose purpose and meaning, and they get a massive dose of depression. So I think this middle way allows you to still have some purpose and meaning, and then decide when, if ever, you want to take your foot off the gas for that part-time gig or that part-time business.
For sure. Yeah. So there's definitely that aspect of it that you might make money longer than you think you're going to make money whenever you actually bring the level of work down to a sustainable level that you can enjoy other things. But then I know you also recently had a conversation with Bill Bengen about the 4% rule.
Yeah.
What did he share, and what does that mean for people that are saving for FI today?
Yeah, sure. So for forever, since I've been paying attention to the FI content out there, it's the 4% rule, and we're just basing it on that, which is, it's been very helpful. And I'm sure you've explained it in the past. You get $1 million portfolio, you can draw 4% on that and feel comfortable that you can draw $40,000 until your dying day, right? It's just this been comfortable notion. And Bill Bengen, this guy who did some research on it, I think back in the 90s, was looking for this easy benchmark for his clients to say, hey, worst case scenario, you could pull 4% out of a portfolio. I think it was probably a 60-40 portfolio or something like that, probably even more conservative, 50-50, something along those lines, very conservative portfolio. And even through all these horrible grinds of recessions and horrible situations, you could still pull out 4% and be fine until your dying day. And so people just glommed onto that rule in the 90s. They're like, that sounds great. We're going to use that for everything. And it became big news, and it became a benchmark for financial advisors, and podcasters like us and things like that just to grab onto. And then Bill Bengen, through his fame after doing this, started to continue to do some research. And he said, well, I think people grabbed onto that 4% rule just a little bit too hard, because I don't think people really need to be having such a conservative portfolio, even in their retirement years. Really, as you look at these things a little bit more, you could easily take higher 4%, like 4.7%. And even if you add a little bit more equities into it, you could easily do 5% and have no failure rate even through another 30 years. He's even done some more research recently where he's talking to folks in the FIRE crowd that this could even go well past 5%. I think the reality is there's no fixed percent for withdrawal rates in retirement. I think a lot of us get fixed on that. I know personally I've done that. Really, you need to have that sliding scale of how much I'm going to take out early, how much I'm going to take out later. Because if you still have multi-millions and you're in your late 70s, you better be up in that past 5%. You got to enjoy your existence here on Earth. Gentlemen, we've got a 75-year average lifespan. So, use this money. And I think what I learned from my conversation with him is that sometimes people can get so fixed on numbers that they forget about the purpose behind the numbers, and that is using this money to enjoy life. So yes, if we've got a good nest egg built up and we can say, man, we're going to be there and be very comfortable in our 60s, what does that say for life now? Well, let's pull back a little bit and enjoy life. Does that mean part-time work? Does that mean using more, even if you don't want to do part-time work, does that mean using more of your money now to create experiences with people that you love? Because that is really the pinnacle of happiness, is connections and social time with people you actually like being around. So utilize your money for that. I know it's great to see big balances on a net worth chart and things like that, but really the untrackable things, the unchartable information about happiness is in time with people that we love. So for me, this has even made it easier to look at that 4% rule, now 5% rule in my mind, that a $1 million portfolio can now net you $50,000 in retirement pretty comfortably. Mm-hmm. So I would encourage people who want to learn more about that to maybe check out his book or to look into some of the interviews that he's done where he explains it much better than I have. But the way he's explained it makes me feel even more comfortable that this middle way is a great way to go.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said, man. And layer on top Social Security, which many of us don't account for too. It's like, come on, how overly conservative are we being right now?
That 5% rule is a nice way to feel comfortable if people are still on the fence, right? Social Security, yeah, we can be doom and gloom and say nothing's going to be there, but really everybody, they're projecting, even in worst case scenario, that we're going to get like 77% of what's projected on SSA.gov. So please, let's stop saying that we're not going to get anything. And then third, if we find work that we enjoy on a part-time or even quarter-time basis, realize that that is income that you can use in retirement. Yes. So please, let's pull back on, having the multi-millions and the tens of millions in our retirement account and pull into enjoying life more now.
Yeah. As we're rounding up this conversation, Andy, if someone is hearing this, they're gaining some confidence through this, but they're still scared to take the leap, is there a small experiment that you recommend that they try first?
Absolutely. So for me and a lot of other folks out there, it feels scary to pull back on something that's working, right? They see, oh my gosh, I have followed this passive index fund strategy, and man, it is making me wealthy. This is never something that my family even had in previous generations. I feel like I am a genius, and it's making me wealthy. And then for somebody to say, hey, you should stop contributing to that thing that's making you feel like a smart genius, can be like, what are you talking about? This is a big decision that I've made that's made big success in my life, and I'm fearful that that big number and the continued growth of it might pull people away from what lies in their current existence, right? Time with people you love and creating memories and making sure that we're not over-indexing on being a multi-millionaire in our retirement. and under indexing, spending time with people that we love and taking care of our health, really. We want to make sure that we're there to enjoy those millions. So the experiment that I would suggest for people is to, if you are in this situation where you've run that Coast Fire calculator and you say, okay, I'm there, or I am Coast Fire, I'm almost there, I would challenge you to say, could I decrease my contributions by 5% over the next couple of months? And then see if that drastically has changed your heart, or has that 5% you now utilize to spend more time on vacation, maybe spend more time with your family, or start to throw into an FU money bucket so that you can say goodbye to a corporate job that you don't like earlier than you thought you could. Those are things that those little experiments could help you move towards a better existence and the ability for you to own your time.
I love that suggestion. And building up that FU money could be such a powerful tool later on in life whenever you're like, okay, I got 12 months, I got 18 months. I know I have at least that amount of runway to make this happen. And maybe that is whenever you go into solopreneur life or try freelancing or something like that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Andy, it's been a pleasure, man. Your book was incredible. Once again, that's Own Your Time. If someone picked up the book, what would they expect to gain after reading it?
Yeah, I have liked books, and I'll just say this. I've liked books where it's a personal story, but then also there are multiple stories from multiple people, so you get different perspectives. So I wanted to write a book like that. So it does weave in a lot of the story that Justin and I shared today from our own personal situation, but then I also brought in dozens of different perspectives from other families who are going through a similar situation. And I also like books that are pretty linear in fashion to say, just tell me the 10 things to get done, man. Stop talking so much. So I put it in that fashion where it's like step 1 through 10, just do these things and you will find the ability to own your time. So I wrote a book in that fashion because that's the book that I always like reading. And again, it's called Own Your Time. You can find it at marriagekidsandmoney.com/book. And we have a pre-order goal right now on Amazon of reaching 500 by launch day. So if you are interested in supporting that goal, I would really appreciate it.
That's awesome. Once again, folks, that is Andy Hill. Own Your Time. Go grab the book wherever you find books. Andy, man, this was a blast. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you, Justin.
That was such a fun conversation with Andy. He is one of my favorite people. I'm so glad I was finally able to get him on the podcast. I hope you guys really enjoyed that. One of my favorite takeaways from Andy was this concept around time freedom. And it's not this all or nothing goal. Someone like him is super inspiring where he's like, you know what? I still need to make a little bit of money in order to pay for the bills, but I don't need to continue over saving for my future. So he moved down from 5 days a week to 3 days a week. And I'm guessing he's probably going to continue to condense those hours as time goes. We were chatting actually a little bit after the recording, and he mentioned that he really enjoys most of the time that he puts towards work now. And he doesn't really see himself reducing those hours in the near-term future, but it's always nice to have that flexibility and optionality there. I also really loved his small challenge to everybody, starting to take some of the money that you are putting towards investing and saving and start utilizing it to either enhance your current life right now, if that's vacationing or buying back some of your time, or putting that into an FU fund so that you can get more and more confident of moving from this full-time work into this part-time work. I would love to build on that and challenge you to start blocking off some time in your week just for deep work or even something else that doesn't even involve work. Something like Friday mornings before 9 a.m., I'm going to work out, I'm going to run. That's going to be my health-focused time. And I might start work an hour or two later than I typically do. I was actually really curious of what people would spend their time on if they, instead of working 5 days a week, worked 3 days a week. So I went ahead and posted on the Five Minded Instagram page, and it was actually surprising. So I gave 4 different answers, one being travel, one being health, one being hobbies and creative passions, and the final one being family and relationships. And 42% of you responded that hobbies and creative passions would be where you would spend or prioritize more of your time if you only worked 3 days a week. On one hand, that really surprises me. I honestly thought family and relationships or health would be the number one choice that was selected. But I'm actually not really surprised. So many of us, especially the ones of us that are numb from these dead-end jobs that we're not really excited about, are craving creativity and hobbies and newness in our life again. So I love the idea of maybe moving back from 40 hours a week to 30 hours a week and spending some of that time learning something new or picking up a hobby that you once spent a lot of time on in the past, but now you want to spend some more time. I had a friend, Courtney, she reached out to me and she said that she would love to just sew more. She'd love to knit more. That was really fun. Many people told me they would love to do all four things, which is not surprising. Some people want to paint more often. My friend wants to spend more time with his girlfriend. I got a lot of really awesome responses, and I'm glad that people are really resonating with this idea of potentially working less. If you liked the ideas that we talked about in this episode with Andy today, I do want to give you one more recommendation for the next episode to listen to, and that is episode 177 with Jillian Johnsred. We talked about this concept around mini retirements. So not only reducing your hours, but actually taking some intentional time off. It could be 6 months, it could be 12 months, and investing in projects or your health or all these other things that we're talking about are important, those big rocks that are important. If you're feeling really burnt out right now, then, rather than part-time work, actually a mini retirement could be a really great idea for you. So once again, that is episode 177 with Jillian Johnsred, where we talked about mini retirements. Thanks for listening to Fi-Minded. And if you haven't yet, make sure that you follow the show so you don't miss next week's episode. Until then, keep having fun while achieving financial independence.